Hey, good afternoon, everybody. So today we are going to do a build along for the BTM system. Right here, I've got a base unit. So when if you're new to the BTM system, just know that that's what we're going to call the base unit. Over here, I've got a hose reel. We've got a good friend named Antonio down in Florida, and he's getting his system set up right now. And this is just a way to make it convenient to reel up your hose at the end of the day, keep everything organized. You can mount it to a cart, you can mount it to your truck, whatever the case might be. But I want to walk us through the BTM system first, and then we're going to walk through the hose reel, how to create all these connections, because it's not good enough that we do it here. You're going to want to have some of the knowledge and expertise so that you can troubleshoot along the way. So that's what today's all about. Now, this is going to be also saved to our YouTube channel and well organized, right, on our YouTube channel, in our playlists. And you'll be able to go back and use this to train other employees to walk through things as well. But now we can train you today on how to set it up to begin with, how to maybe modify it over time for your needs as those needs change, and then how to maintain it. And let's do some use along the way as well. So Grayson is behind the camera. Occasionally today, we're going to move around a little bit so that you can kind of keep up with us here and show you what we're looking at every step of the way. Now, if you're in the chat on the live stream and you need to see something, just let us know, right? We can take that camera out of the mount and get closer if we need to. So just let us know if there's something that you want to see along the way, and we'll do that. Just treat this like a conversation, right? So if you have a question along the way, or have a best practice even that's worked well for you, the more we learn, the more you learn, the better off everybody is in the EnviroGuard community. So with that, let's start and first walk through the BTM system itself. And Grayson, maybe for this, we just swivel a little bit toward this so I can walk everybody through it. Is that
good? Get a little bit closer?
It's about as close as you can get right there, I think.
Yeah, about right there.
Right. Okay. So let's start over here in the pump housing, okay? So within the pump housing, you've got your two pumps, all right? Then down here, there are two things that you want to pay attention to. This thinner hose here, this is your air line, and the thicker hose, that is your chemical line, okay? Now, and then the chemical line is coming up into the back of each of the pumps here, flowing through the pump, and then the red and the blue is out to your guns. All right. So that's just kind of the flow of things. Now, a couple things you want to keep in mind, because occasionally, from a troubleshooting standpoint, you just need to know this, right? You've got your air pump fitting. That's that black fitting right there. All right. And then for each of the chemical lines, that's just called a pump fitting. Okay. So air fitting, air pump fitting, and let me try that again. Air pump fitting and pump fitting, okay? So your pump fitting is for liquid, your air pump fitting is for air. The reason I mention those is that occasionally this little fitting here, let me push up on it and release it. Well, I'll do it on this one, it's easier to get to. This will come, it'll sag a little bit on you, okay? And when that happens, you just want to push that back in there, and it'll snug everything back up for you. So if for some reason you feel like you're not you're not getting any flow through your system, right? It's just pulling air or something like that. It probably has to do with your airline. Just go through each of those and just snug it up. The other thing that can happen is occasionally it'll get loose enough where it becomes worn around this polypropylene hose right here. Just snip off the end of that polypropylene hose and just fit it back in there. Now, if you have a BTM system currently, you probably see something in ours right now that's a little different. Now, Keith Phillips is over here from Franklin, Tennessee right now. And before he got here today, I actually installed these shutoff valves, okay? Now, these shutoff valves are if you only want to run one pump at a time. Like, let's say that you're using your system for X4 application, right? Which is a perfectly good way to use it, but you don't want to, there's nothing else that you need that day. Well, in that case, you can cut off one of the pumps here, and air is never going to, air cycling through your pumps is never going to hurt your pump. but it is annoying, right, to have your pump running all the time. So if you want to switch off a pump, you can simply install one of these auto shutoffs here right in line. All I did was I came in here, literally cut it in half, reinstalled it. Not a big deal. But you can, shut this off then and just run one product at a time. All right. So what I have going on right now is I've got my red pump, what we typically talk as the OxyPrep pump, open, and then my OxyPar pump is closed off over here. Okay. So we've gone from siphon tubes to the pumps themselves, air line, and then chemical lines going out here. And everything that you see is in red and blue. Even if you look under the unit here, your siphon hose here is red, your siphon hose here is blue. And today we're going to be using, for demonstration, the red line. Okay? Now, let me turn this around for you, Grayson, just so you can get a shot of this. How's that on? Can you see on camera? Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, stop me, guys, if you have any questions as we go through this. The next portion of our BTM base unit right here is our motor, okay? Not a whole lot you ever need to know or do about the motor, except that right over top of the motor, this is where your main shutoff is for your airline. When you start up your unit and when you're finished for the day, always close that off. It allows, when you reprime your system each and every day, for you to build pressure into your tanks to begin with before you begin using it, okay? So always shut that off when it's not in use. That's just a best practice. And then one more thing, and Tucker, if you would move this speaker so I don't accidentally knock it over here, or I'm sorry, microphone. I just want you to see is on the back of this, this is your pressure release. Now I've got pressure in this right now, so I'm not going to release it because we're going to demonstrate use as well. But at the end of every day, simply release this pressure from the system, not only so it doesn't continue to be pressurized, but condensation will form, and over time, that will create some corrosion on the insides of these, okay? So you want to make sure you just release that each and every day. I would just allow it to remain open in storage, and then, before you'll know the next day if you forgot to close it because it'll release, right? But that will keep your system dry and maximize the longevity of your compressor, okay? So that is the base unit. Yes, sir?
I got to put another comment because I have one of those machines, and that step you just went over is very critical to get don't let moisture build up in, because it will come up and it will mess up your regulator.
Right, that's true too.
That water, when it gets enough. So.
That is one thing that we should show here. Okay. Besides your on-off switch over here in your base unit, there are two regulators here. Okay. These are both showing pressure. This one that's directly attached to the compressor tanks, that's the pressure within the tanks. Don't worry about that. This one here is tied to your air line. This is where you'll adjust your pressure. So as you have more hoses that you might be using or longer hoses, then you'll want to adjust this up and down. Ideally, keep it around 50 PSI. That keeps you at a nice low pressure, plenty for spraying anything that is low viscosity. And by the way, that's what this is meant for anyway, okay? You're going to be using this to spray all of your low viscosity products. So think of cleaners, disinfectants, your like OxyPrep for mold stain removal, or even sealants like X4 is water thin, EnviroSeal is water thin. Those are the perfect products to use through this system. What that prevents is any chemical blowback, and this product, unlike let's say an airless spray system, is meant to handle any corrosives, whereas a high pressure unit is not only meant for heavier viscosity products, let's say Max Guard, Masonry Guard, Clear Guard, things like that. But it's also not built internally because there's so much aluminum in it. It's not built to handle corrosive products. And anytime we're talking about oxidizers, whether we're talking about chlorine dioxide or something that's chlorinated like OxyPrep, or anything that's hydrogen peroxide based like OxyPar, SuperPar, things like that, all of those products are going to corrode over time the internal workings of a airless sprayer. So there's two reasons that you want to stay low pressure, high pressure: corrosive materials and thin and thick viscosity. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, let us know and we'll take you through that again. But typically that's how we parse things out. Keep your equipment on kind of separate sides of the room for separate products. Okay, so we've handled the base unit here. Let's talk next about assemblies, because this is a base unit assembly, and then everything that makes up another assembly we call like a hose assembly, for example. So right here, I've got our red hose already quick connected into our pumps, right? And the way that we do that, let me see if I've got one here. Hold on one second. The way that we do that is with a socket. Now, in this case, and we go over this in all the classes that we do so everyone understands the terminology, a socket is what retracts. What goes into that socket is a plug, okay? And that's what forms your quick connect. So these are a socket and a plug are neither male nor female. What determines male and female is the threading, okay? So both of these are male because the threading is outward, right? Whereas, let's see if I have a, hold on one second again. This here, it's a socket, right? It retracts, but because the threading is to the inside, now this is a female socket. So whenever we're talking on the phone and maybe troubleshooting something together, just know we're probably going to ask you about sockets and plugs, and if you need male or female or something like that. These are 316 stainless, so you shouldn't have to replace these very frequently because they're corrosion resistant, but it's good to know the terminology anyway. Okay, so we are now into our hose assembly. Now you'll notice right here, I've only almost finished one side, and I want to take you through this so you understand how a hose assembly is built, and some of the tools that you'll probably want to have on hand too, because again, we can do this here and we can put everything together for you and water test it so it's ready to go. But what happens if for some reason you develop a hole in a line and you just need to very quickly have the opportunity to cut it off where you've got a hole and then create an assembly again, right? So we're going to walk you through that right now so you understand the process of putting together a hose assembly. Because if you're going to have something go wrong in the field, most likely it's going to be with the hose, okay? Because, these things are just made out of plastic. They're reinforced, but they're still just plastic. So there's three components to a hose assembly that you want for each side. First, you want a clamp. You're always going to put your clamp on first because you want to be able to identify what's what, right? So you want to know what your red line is and what your blue line is. So this is shrink tube right here. I'm just going to put my shrink tube in behind it, okay? And then the last thing that goes in is your barb, all right? Now the barb has two sides to it. You've got the barb itself, right, this side, and then it's a male barb, okay? You can get male and female barbs, but in this case, that's a male barb, meaning that we're going to thread something that's female onto it. So this is you just muscle these on. They're not real hard, but when you do, and by the way, I'm doing this because there's plenty of people out there who have plenty of experience with this, understand all this stuff up and down, but there's plenty of new people that you're probably going to be, employing over time who will want to know exactly how to do this. So when you're inserting this, simply twist it as you insert rather than just pushing it straight on, and it'll go right on for you. And then all that you're going to do is you're going to slide that shrink tube right back over. Now, one piece of equipment that will allow you to do this fast, this is just a little Wagner heat gun. Okay, you can't do this really with a hair dryer. It just doesn't work. We tried to do it cheap and it doesn't work. These are about $30. You can pick them up at Lowe's or whatever. So what you're going to do is you're just going to apply heat from the farthest point, right? And it's just going to suck right to. And I go twice. I go right back and forth like that, And you see the texture just wraps right around that. And we're on. Okay. So now we've got two sides ready to go, except I need to bring up my clamps. Okay. And the clamp has two ears to it, right? So an ear over here and an ear over here. And what you're going to use for that is a clamp tool. And again, this is like available as, this is the most expensive little piece of equipment. You'll buy it once, but you'll hate buying it because like $65 for that little, that little thing. And all you're going to do, now here's what I did learn. You need a little bit, just a tiny bit of space between this clamp and your barb right there, because you got to fit that around it. Okay. And then all that you do is snug that up. You don't need to go all the way, but just snug it up just enough so it really puts the smack down on the hose. Okay. Yep. Come on there. All right. And now we've got our fitting complete. Okay. We'll do the other one over here. Again, pull it away just a little bit. You don't need to go all the way down. It's good. You'll know when it's tight enough. Okay. And now that assembly is complete, except for the fact that we need a female plug and a female socket on this. Okay. So let me grab a female socket right here. Okay. Now, of course, we're going to wrench that down, right? We're going to make sure that this is completely watertight. And before I put that on, by the way, I put some plumber's tape on there. But the brand that I'm using right now is the Mega Tape brand. This is completely corrosive and chemical resistant, okay? So there's a couple brands out there that are, but this Mega Tape right now is just what I'm using today, or what I used for this setup here. So anywhere where we have a male connection, a male thread, that's where we want to go ahead and put our tape on. And I'm going to demonstrate that on something here in a second, so you see exactly how to put that on as well. But you want to make sure that it's chemical resistant. Let's go ahead and do it on a male plug. Okay. So the way that you want to do this is you want to do it in the opposite direction of how you're going to thread on a fitting. Okay. So all fittings typically are going to go clockwise. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to apply this counterclockwise. One thing Keith and I were talking about as we we're getting set up today was the fact that you don't want to let that tape kind of sneak outside of your threading. And the reason is that over time, just the pressure from chemical going through that is going to break off that tape, and it's going to just get in. It's going to get into your hose. It's going to get into a pump or something of that nature. And so when you're doing this, just kind of take your time. Again, you only do it once for a while, and make sure you get it on there well. And also, don't be afraid to put to wrap it 3 or 4 times. If you wrap it once, I guarantee you're probably going to have to re-wrap it again. So get it around there, pull it off, and now you're ready to go. Okay. So just some thoughts on plumber's tape. All right. So now we've got our socket, right? The socket side of things, that we use a female socket to create that end. Now we're going to use a female plug on the other side. I'm going to grab one of those. Female plug. Okay. All right. So I didn't show one of these on camera yet. So that's what a female plug looks like. Does that look okay, Grayson? Can you see it all right?
Yeah, you can see it.
All right. And then, of course, the female is determined right there. All right. So now we're going to take this onto the hose. And now you truly have your hose assembly. Okay. Now, what you'll notice is that we plug into everything. So coming out of our housing here, we've got the socket and we're plugging, literally plugging, right, into the socket. And now at the end of your hose, you're going to have another socket, and we're going to plug into the socket now with your gun assembly. So now I'm going to walk you through the gun assembly. This is what's known as a PSG gun, okay? There's two sides to it, right? And what we've got to do first is we've actually got to create a reduction in this. So I've got two reducers over here. All right, so one side, and here's the second side. And as you can probably already tell, since you know what now is male and female, we're going to take our male plug and go directly into that reducer, okay? And it's really important with these again, and this is a place where it's most critical, I would say. If I'm going to have a leak, which the one that I'm going to actually water test for you here, which is Keith's unit, if I'm going to have a leak, it's actually going to be right here between this molded piece, the gun itself, and like that reducer, okay? So put plenty of plumber's tape on that reducer right there to prevent against leaks. We were setting up today, and I noticed myself, oh, I've got a leak. Yeah, after this is done, I'm going to go back and put more plumber's tape on that side. I don't have it on this side yet, but this is just for demonstration, right? We're going to thread in here. And now that's as simple as the PSG gun assembly gets, right? So now, right, we're coming out from the base unit to the hose assembly to the PSG gun assembly. And now we've got another quick connect at the end here, all right? Now, what's the next step? You could go directly into let me show you this. Here we go. You could go and have a plug with a tip in it. Do you have a tip right here? I feel like I'm doing this a whole lot. I should just have everything out here in front of me. All right. So you could, if you were going to use one tip alone per gun, you could just go take a tip. This happens to be a 8002, okay, which I'll get into that in a second, what 8002 means. But you could go put an 8002 tip directly into a female plug, and we could connect to that immediately, and we'd be good to spray. Okay, that's one option that we have. Maybe not the best option. The next thing that you could do is you could actually connect to a lance assembly. Now, a lance assembly, again, is going to have your plug end and your socket end of things. And this allows you to do a couple things. Number one, it gives you some reach. Number two, it keeps you from working directly on top of chemicals. And number three, it allows you to leverage areas where maybe you just need reach, but the area is just inaccessible otherwise. And this could work for that, but you might need longer reach. And in that case, you could use something as long as this, okay? This is a 79-inch lance already with plug and socket. You might go, man, that's going to be heavy. Well, think of this like if I'm in a really low slung crawl space, or if I'm in an attic space and I need to get down to the soffits, right? And there's just, there's a lot of insulation out in front of me and I just need that extra hand, right? Well, you're going to obviously balance part of this with one hand and then be using the gun on the other hand to do that. And granted, it is a little more, it's a little heavier than this lance here, but it gives you options. I'm not saying you're going to use this every day, but if you do, it's available. All right, so let's get back to something a little more everyday here. Now we've got our lance assembly here, and then again, you could go directly into that tip assembly, or let's see, I've got one that we're going to demo here in a second. You could go into a coupler. Now, we found that the coupler has a couple advantages to it. First of all, it's color-coded, as you can see. We've got blue and we've got red to keep everything aligned from one line to the next. But you'll notice that I've got 2 tips in here. What we found is that when it comes to OxyPrep, OxyPar, those sorts of things, sometimes you want to be able to miss them. Like with OxyPar, that's simply the product that's doing the reacting, right? It's your neutralization product for OxyPrep. Well, you don't need to spray it. In fact, you don't want to use too much of it or create drips and waste and things like that. So a 0.1 gallon per minute tip really allows you to choke up on the flow rate of OxyPar and just get that mist that you might need. And for that, I would select an 8001. I told you I would tell you what these mean. 80 is your fan width, okay? So 80 gives you an 80-degree fan pattern. The 01 tells you that it's 0.1 gallons per minute. If it were a 1 gallon per minute, it would be an 80-10, if that makes sense. So think of that second 2 numbers as a decimal in between the 2 for your flow rate. So in this right now, and I want to show you this on a wall assembly I've got built over here, I'm going to show you the difference between the mist that an 8001 puts out as compared to the spray pattern of an 8002. So what I would do is always have 2 tips in your coupler, because if you're working in a hot attic, I've done this plenty of times, you go, boy, it's drying too quickly. I need to go to the next size up. Maybe that next size for you is an 8003 or an 8004, something that can give you more output. Or let's say that you're working on a surface that really is absorbative, and in that case, you might need a little bit larger size. So by having a blue, let's say your blue coupler has your OxyPar, so it might have like an 8001 and an 8002 in your OxyPrep, because you're using that to wet out a surface or to apply faster or whatever. You might want an 8004 and an 8002. That way, you get your ratios right as well. You use about half as much OxyPar as you do OxyPrep. And I know I'm talking about OxyPrep and OxyPar a lot here. That's not to say that this can't be used for any other thin products like Deutrion or like I mentioned X4 before, but it's only because when we originally developed this, we developed it to create efficiency in mold remediation, and then learned over time how it works for a host of other jobs and things like that. Okay, so now we've got our coupler. By the way, this is also harder to lose. Like, it's easy to drop that on the ground and lose that forever, but because you've got color going for you here, it's a little bit larger, things like that, it makes it easier to see on the job. Let me go down my thing here and make sure I've got everything. Lance assembly, couplers. Yeah, okay. So let's go ahead and do a little demo on this so you can see the difference between an 8001 and an 8002 tip. And hopefully the camera will be able to capture this so that you can see like the misting versus the spraying. Certainly on the surface you're going to be able to see it, but maybe you'll even be able to see it in the air. So let's check that out. And Grayson, if you would follow me for that, it'd be great. I'm going to insert this again. See, I'm going to go with 8001 first. Okay. You got your, there you go. And let me make sure I'm turned on over here. And that we got the air opened up. We'll get surprised. All right. You got that there, Grayson?
Yep.
Okay. Now, I said earlier, like we haven't water tested this unit yet, but you can see this is the one area where I just didn't put enough plumber's tape on things, and you can see it dripping. This is why we always water test first, okay? So here's a good lesson for you. When you get a new BTM system and you bring it in, get everything out, set it all up like we've done here, and with your team, water test everything first, right? Just because it's coming from us doesn't mean that things don't get jostled in transit. Lord knows that with FedEx and UPS these days, that can be an issue, okay? So water test it first before you get OxyPrep, OxyPar, anything else in the line and get out into the field, all right? So just make sure you do that. Now we're going to go ahead here, and I'm going to move this down. So normally the fan would be coming out just like this, okay? I'm going to move it down. I'm just going to rotate it like that so we can just go straight down here, and let's see if you can see kind of what I'm seeing. If you need, yeah, feel free to get closer. Now, if you notice that, we just sprayed this entire cavity from joist to joist. I've got these 16 inches on center, right? I was probably about 18 inches from that, that's about 18 inches, yeah, 18 inches from the material itself. So I was able to create, get through an entire joist bay that way. Now let me do this. I'm gonna release the 8001, go to our 8002, and let's show you the difference. See how much more it puts on the surface? That's great when you have a surface that can absorb that much product. But if you don't, choke back to your 8001, you're going to prevent dripping. Okay, so really, I'm a big proponent of anything that involves testing, right? Before you get full-blown into a job, test your tips. Every substrate that you're going to work on is going to be more or less absorptive. And if you don't want dripping, running, things like that, the key to that is going to be in your tip, okay? Your pressure is always going to be at 50 psi, but your tip is critical for that. And again, that's why you can set yourself up for success with a coupler in the beginning, because now you're not wrenching anything in the system out, right? If you've got to wrench out tips constantly to get it right, you're going to waste a lot of time in the field. But if you've got everything in couplers, everything's quick connected, it's going to save you a lot of time and allow you to dial in pretty quickly. You can get these in a quad coupler. We've got them. But the problem with a quad coupler is that it gets heavy, okay? So if you want to, if you can select the best two tips that you use constantly for each coupler, then it'll just, make everything in the field fast, all right? All right, so let's go back over to the table and we'll get into the reel. Coming right through that way. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that alone. So I'm gonna move this out of the way. Did you get any questions or anything like that in the stream? Nope, we're good. Okay, now this is a hose reel, as you can probably see. Are you looking for something? Well, it is what it is. I'm not that concerned about it. All right, so this is a hose reel, and this hose reel in particular is meant to be able to put, you just lost something there, Tucker. Okay. This hose reel in particular is meant so that you can connect two products and wind two hoses on this at a time, okay? You can use, if you've been around for a while, you probably saw that we started out with a bonded hose to begin with. Bonded hose is great for kind of keeping everything together, but then at the end, if you need to be flexible to have two technicians go in separate directions, what are you going to do with a bonded hose, right? So we have kind of been getting away from the bonded hose. Plus, it's so much more expensive, and if you got to replace it, for 100 feet, it's like $400. So anyway, but nevertheless, this can work exactly the same way. So we've got two sets coming in and two sets going out to your hose. So what I mean by coming in is coming in from your base unit to the reel and then out from the reel to the tip, okay? So I want to show you how this is going to come so that you know exactly how to work with this. So the first thing that you need to know is that don't throw this away right here, okay? Keep that on you. And as you're replacing things, and I'm going to show you why we're going to do this, you want a hard connection from your reel over to your base unit, right? Because if you've got this on a cart or if you've got this on your truck or something, most likely it's going to stay mounted there, all right? But what you're not going to be able to do is use these compression fittings that come with it. So we're going to get rid of these. All right. And we're never going to use these again. At least I don't think we are. All right. So we're going to get rid of both of these. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to hardwire, and over here, we're going to go in with a male hose barb, and over here, we're going to go in with a male hose barb, right? You probably see where this is going. And then, let's just pretend. Hey, Tucker, can you hand me a clear braid hose down there? All right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to plumb, just like we did before, right? And you might want to do the exact same thing here where, hey, Tucker, will you grab me that red and blue shrink tube over there? Thank you. If you want to keep it really aligned, you're going to go on with your shrink tube and plumb over here, depending upon how far you need to go, so everything's in alignment. And then we're going to create our hose barb connections here using our clamps again. Okay, so that's what that connection is going to look like. In fact, let's just like kind of mock that up a little bit. Let me get rid of that. All right, so this is what it's going to look like right here. Okay, and that can be as long as you need it to be, obviously. So now we're connected here. Now where it gets trickier. Oh, before I do that, let me say this. What we're going to do is we're going to come back over top like that. When we're done, that's why you want to keep that connection there, because then that holds everything down here in place and keeps that from rotating. That's what the purpose of that is. You want to keep that from rotating. Now, here are the connections that we need to make, right? So we've got to go in, not with hose barbs, but this is what's called a mender. Okay, this can be used to mend two types of hose together, and that's what we're going to do here. Because what you want to do is that this connection, you need to keep it flat, right? You don't want any sort of quick connect or anything in there, or it gets real bulky and difficult to roll all of this up. So it's almost like you're just making an extension to this, but it's going to work the same way. So if I've already got it mocked up here. So on this side of things, right, we're going to go ahead and, again, this is just, for frame of reference, now we've got that marked red. So we know that red goes to red. We know that we're doing the right thing. And we're going to bring up those collars or those clamps, once we get it in, right around the top of it on each side, right? So both of these hoses have an outside diameter. The outside diameter of this is like, I want to say it's like 3/8 of an inch on this hose here. This is a 1/4 inch hose, but that's the inside diameter. I think that the outside diameter is like 3/8 of an inch. It might be slightly larger than that. The outside diameter of this is more like, close to 1/2 of an inch. So we're going to use one size of clamp here and a different size of clamp over there. So if you order this unit from us, you're going to get clamps that fit this side as well, okay? And then these are just going to connect to one another, okay? Well, I won't do this right now because that's going to take a little bit of time, but you can see that that's our connection from one side to the other side. Now, again, I would not recommend using any quick connect fittings in here. You could over here. So if occasionally you want to be able to disconnect your reel from your base unit and then create a quick connection over here, because sometimes you just need to be more flexible or nimble, you could absolutely create a quick connection over here. And again, when if you're ordering or if you need us to help you assemble this, let us know what you want to do, because all of this is done custom, right? We'll build whatever BTM system you want to build for your services. We just need to kind of map it out with you and make sure that all the fittings that go along with it are there when we send it to you. I think that is really it between the two units. Yes, sir.
That reel is that just for one hose?
No, this has two hoses.
Yeah, I saw 2 hoses. This whole 200 feet?
Yep. Wow. Yeah. It's amazing how much you can fit on these. We've got these, which which are just hand crank, and then we've actually got a unit back there that's electric. All the technicians want you to buy an electric one for 5 times as much. But yeah, in any case, yeah, you can put 200 feet, 100 feet per hose on this reel, but you've got a total of 200 feet of total hose on this reel. Okay. One thing that we have seen people do now over time is that rather than doing 100 feet hose, if you're not using a hose reel, if you're using a hose reel, 100 feet of hose is great on each. If you're not, doing shorter runs of 50, and that's actually what I've got on this right here, right? This is 50 feet. And then doing 2 of these or 3 of these or whatever to get your total length makes it a little bit easier for storage and that sort of thing. So just think about that, how many feet you want. If you want it to be 25 feet, 50 feet, whatever, for easy, roll up, roll on or roll off of a job, if you will, in storage. And then that'll determine our quick connections and things like that. I think that's all. Do we have any questions in our stream? No? We're good? Okay. Well, then I think that's it for today. If you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can get in touch at area code 828-548-3900. Again, that is 828-548-3900, or simply send an email to support@enviroguarddirect.com. That's support@enviroguarddirect.com, and we'll be happy to build you whatever you need to build. Thanks so much for your time today. We'll be doing another, well, it's not going to be a live stream next Friday. I just got back from Florida, and we're going to, for all of our Dutreon customers, we're going to be working through the sales process for odor mitigation jobs next Friday afternoon. We'll put that link out, probably on like Monday or something like that to everybody. But the purpose is to help you create a duplicatable sales process, to have a really good odor assessment on the front side of things, to lock your customer down, to know how to price properly, those sorts of things. So stay tuned for some information next Friday where it's going to be a totally different setup. It'll probably be more like webinar style or something like that, where we can really see each other and interact, or I can see you anyway and interact and answer your questions. But we've got a lot of great tools, and what we're going to introduce also is a brand new handout for odor mitigation jobs and a brand new real estate presentation that I think you're going to love. It's only like a 10-minute presentation, but it gets real estate agents really involved and excited about your presentation while featuring you. So anyway, that's next Friday. We'll see you then, hopefully. Hope that you learned a lot from this today. Again, we look forward to serving you any way we can. Thanks a lot.